Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in case you weren't aware, I'm trying to become a YouTuber, and I'm not finding too much success, but that's okay with me. I didn't start this channel because I wanted to make $1 million or get 1,000,000,000 views. I just wanted to talk about the things that I like and make videos. However, I did decide to take a look at bigger channels to see if I may be missing something about this whole YouTube thing. And that's when a realization struck me. All of the big YouTube channels have one thing in common. They all steal content. It's all stolen. All the way at the top, all the way down, it's all stolen. And these stolen videos get millions of views. So that's when I came up with a brilliant scheme. Find the best motorsports content on YouTube. The most riveting, the most intriguing, the most entertaining stuff I could find, and then steal it, put a MotoGP twist on it, pack it, label it, and ship it, call it my own, and call it a day. Watch the views roll in. So, whose content would I steal? Well, I had a long, hard look. I couldn't just blatantly steal MotoGP content because, well, that would be stealing the idea directly, and that would be too obvious. No. We have to be a lot more discreet here. I had to take content about a different motorsport and steal that. So I chose the biggest motorsport on YouTube, Formula 1. And I went to my favorite Formula 1 YouTuber, Mr. V's Garage. And I said, what's some content here that I could steal to make a MotoGP video? And then I found this, the holy grail of YouTube videos, perfect for stealing. It's just statistics, it's not unique to Formula 1. I can do this video. So I put my scheme in motion. I opened my email and typed this. Dear Mr. V, I'm a small town YouTuber with big city dreams. I just started my channel where I talk about MotoGP, and I realized in order to grow an audience, I need to think like a big YouTuber. All the big YouTubers I know have one thing in common. They steal content. Thus, I would like to ask if I could steal your video idea, what if F1's champion was banned like F2, and apply it to MotoGP. I'm a big fan, and being able to shamelessly steal your content would be a huge honor. Thanks. B. Now, transparently, this whole stupid bit was supposed to end with me going, oh, they didn't answer, that's perfect, it means I can steal their content. But they actually did answer, and they were like really nice. So now I kind of feel bad for wasting their time, and if you somehow found this video and you don't know who Mr. V's Garage is, go watch his videos, they're amazing. Anyway, onto the video. MotoGP has run 75 Premier Class World Championships throughout its history. Of those 75, 46 of them have been repeat champions. That means that only 29 championships have been claimed by brand new champions. This is ridiculous. MotoGP is known for having stretches where riders will win 3, 5, even up to 7 championships in a row, leaving very little for their competitors to sweep up. But what if this wasn't possible? Well, in Formula 2, which is the highest feeder class prior to Formula 1, the champion is banned. That means that after the championship, it's move up to Formula 1 or go somewhere else, because you can't compete in Formula 2 anymore. What if this was applied to MotoGP? Well, actually, this is what if it was applied to Formula 1, applied to MotoGP, but you get the idea. While this would make for an objectively terrible racing series from a fan's point of view, I mean, no stars would ever be able to properly emerge because if you're good at the sport, you're out of it after 1 or 2 years. While this may be true, it would allow for some stars to potentially emerge as champions, when in real life they never got the chance because they were too busy competing with legends. So how do you go about removing all the champions from MotoGP history? Well, at first glance, you might think, oh, that's easy, just delete whoever the champion was and then look at the points and figure out who was next. But in reality, it's not that easy. See, if a champion is gone, they're not just gone from the points, they're gone from every single race, which means you need to go back and rescore the results of every single race based on whether or not they were there. After rescoring every race, you tally up the new points, and then you figure out who the champion was. Now, while about 90% of the time this is the rider who finished atop the points in real life minus the champions, there are some cases where the riders in second or even third come out on top just because of the way that the results shook out that year. With that being said, I rescored every single race in MotoGP history, and I figured out what would happen if champions were banned. Please, I would really appreciate it if you would like, and if you enjoy the video, subscribe. This took a lot of time, and it makes the world of difference, especially on a small channel like mine. Now, let's dive in to the brand new history of MotoGP.
Doctors in all parts of the country were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" Once again, the brand named most was Camel.
1949 was the first year of the Motorcycle Grand Prix Racing World Championship, and nothing changes. No champions were banned, it was everyone's first year, which means the results stay exactly the same, and British rider Leslie Graham claims the title. 1950 doesn't see a whole lot of changes either. Umberto Massetti won the championship over Leslie Graham in real life, and he keeps it here. In fact, Leslie Graham's win in the Swiss Grand Prix is erased, and it's credited to Massetti instead, meaning that if anything, Massetti wins a more dominant championship here than he did in real life. Massetti is now banned from the sport. The following year, Jeff Duke and Alfredo Milani would battle for the championship. Duke would come out on top in the end, and Massetti would end up in third for the championship. Without Massetti's inclusion, Duke actually sees a boost in points, meaning that he wins the championship by a wider margin than he did in real life. So far, nothing has changed. But as we enter 1952, we see the first major divergence from reality. Umberto Massetti would win his second world championship in 1952, but this wouldn't be possible. He's banned. With the top two riders already out of the series, Irish rider Reg Armstrong would go on to take the championship instead, just ahead of Ken Kavanagh and Rod Coleman. Armstrong becomes the first rider who never won a championship in real life to take one in our new timeline. In 1953, Jeff Duke would win his second Premier Class World Championship. However, in our new timeline, with him gone, Australian rider Ken Kavanagh was free to make up for his second place finish in 1952 with the championship win in 1953. 1954 would see Jeff Duke's third world championship in real life, a dominant run where he would win 5 of the 8 races which counted towards the world championship. Something about the early days of the Motorcycle Grand Prix Racing World Championship that's starting to make things interesting is that not many people showed up. See, a lot of riders couldn't afford to pay airfare to every single round on the calendar, so the main contenders were really just the guys who could show up and compete at every single round. If you knew that you weren't going to be competitive for a championship, why would you bother going? It just wasn't the way that things were done back then. So we're starting to enter a time where most of the competitors are gone now, so it really just becomes a game of who is able to finish the most races. This year, the only riders who were able to compete in every single event were Ray Am, Dickie Dale, and Fergus Anderson. Ferguson would end up retiring from the majority of races that he started, and in the end, Ray Am would win the championship on the back of 3 victories and a 3rd place, beating out Dickie Dale. 1955 would see the top 3 contenders from real life banned from the championship. Giuseppe Colnago would take the championship just ahead of Carlo Bandirola. In 1956, John Surtees would famously win the Premier Class Championship in his rookie season. Of course, he keeps that honor here. Surtees would win the first 3 rounds with ease before breaking his arm in the German Grand Prix. This would still be enough to net him the World Championship, now ahead of German rider Walter Zeller. Libero Liberati would race his only full-time Premier Class season in 1957, and amazingly, he would win the championship. He keeps it here. In fact, he wins it in an utterly dominant fashion, winning every single race except for the Isle of Man, which was won by Bob McIntyre. 1958 would famously see one of the most dominant victories in MotoGP history. John Surtees would win all but 1 round this year. However, with him gone, things change. In a relatively close series, Dickie Dale finally gets his championship on the back of wins in Germany and Assen. The following year in 1959, John Surtees would complete one of just 2 perfect seasons in MotoGP history. Of course, in this reality, he never gets a chance. And the championship instead goes to Italian rider Remo Venturi on his MV Agusta machine. Another fault with this methodology of rewriting history is that this doesn't take into account the fluctuations in the rider market. The best riders were often given seats on the best bikes factory teams, and with them gone, those teams would surely sign other riders. However, because we can't take that into account, there's nothing that we can do. However, it's fair to assume that ever since 1954, things would have spiraled into some ridiculous butterfly effect, where now we have Marc Marquez as a one-time world champion riding a Suzuki bike, and Pecco Bagnaia riding a Kawasaki. Take 1960, for example.
3 22-year-old airline stewardesses.
But one of us is a fake.
In real life, we were already 3 years into MV Agusta's absolute dominant streak. 4 of the top 5 riders this year all rode for Count Agusta, and those top 4 are all eliminated from contention. The only remaining rider in the top 5 is Emilio Mendagni, who just barely takes the championship over a young Mike Hailwood. In 1961, Rhodesian rider Gary Hocking would have an utterly dominant season, winning 7 out of the 10 rounds on the calendar. He would take the championship with the maximum amount of points allowed by the net point system in place at the time. Watch this video if you want to learn more about the different point systems in MotoGP history. He, of course, keeps the championship here. He beats out Mike Hailwood, who would take second place in every single race. By this time, Hailwood would surely be considered one of the best riders on the planet, and a heavy favorite heading into 1962. He had already come in second place in 2 world championships, just barely missing out and clearly being better than the rest of his competition. British fans would finally get their wish. Mike Hailwood would take the Riders' Championship in 1962, and finally be able to move on from Grand Prix motorcycle racing. 1963 would see British rider Phil Reed get off to a dominant start, winning each of the first 3 rounds, trailed closely by Alan Shepard. Reed wouldn't finish another race this season, and Shepard would continue to consistently finish in second. Eventually, Shepard would take the World Championship 8 points ahead of Reed. 1964 would see one of the most epic battles in the series history, a 4-way title fight between riders from 4 different countries. Australian rider Jack Ahern got 2 wins and finished all but 1 race that season. Canada's Mike Duff wouldn't finish off the podium, but he also wouldn't finish all that much. South Africa's Paddy Driver would secure 4 podiums in 6 of the 9 races that year, but above them all, in search of revenge for the year prior, was Phil Reed, netting 3 wins across 5 finishes to secure 30 points and the World Championship. In real life, 1965 would see a dominant campaign from Mike Hailwood, who would go undefeated and would only miss 2 races. It would also see a spectacular rookie campaign from a young Giacomo Agostini, who in real life would go on to win 8 Premier Class titles. In this reality, however, he doesn't have Hailwood to triumph over him, and after just 1 season, Giacomo Agostini moves on from Grand Prix motorcycle racing after his rookie year. Agostini would win 8 races this season, finishing with the maximum allotted number of points, and retiring from the sport after just 1 season competing. In real life, it would take him 1 more year to win the World Championship. In 1966, he would battle with Hailwood. However, with both of them gone, longtime Australian rider Jack Findlay, who ended up having the 3rd longest career in MotoGP history, would end up taking the championship from them instead. He would be banned from the sport after his spectacular championship campaign on his matchless machine. While in real life, 1967 would see the closest Premier Class title fight in championship history, with both riders finishing tied for points, it wouldn't be so close in this new reality. British rider Peter Williams coasts to victory with 3 wins. This is another season where most of the contenders who finished a majority of the races have already been eliminated, leaving slim pickings, so Peter's 3 wins secure him a pretty solid victory. His closest rival was Switzerland's Gyula Marsovski, who sadly finished just 2 points away after 5 podium finishes. 1968 was a wildly lackluster season in our new reality. This is what I mean by the championship would kind of suck if it was actually run like this in real life. While it might be interesting to see how long it would take certain riders to get championships, you would also have years like this. See, in real life, Agostini would get the 2nd perfect season in MotoGP history. In our new reality, no one would step up in any meaningful way. Only 1 rider scored multiple wins this season, Derek Woodman, and with those being his only point-scoring finishes all season, he didn't make much of an impact. Woodman shouldn't feel too bad though, as only one rider this year would finish with more than 20 points. That would be Gyula Marsovsky, who would finish with a record of P3, P2, P11, P1, and P4, alongside 5 retirements. He wins the championship with the fewest points in history. I feel like this season would be the equivalent of watching like an NBA game from the 50s. Like, yeah, 19 to 17 is technically close, but you're not watching who's better, you're watching who sucks less. God, hopefully next year will be better. 1969 saw the introduction of a brand new point system, and Giacomo Agostini would famously cross 100 points for the first time with it. Nobody this season comes close, however. With him gone, the title fight actually becomes a relatively close affair. Billy Nelson and Godfrey Nash would duke it out for the championship. Nelson would secure 3 victories, while Nash would finish in the points every single race, being very consistent across the season. Nelson led Nash by just 5 points ahead of the final round of the season. Now, this was going to be an epic battle, right down to the wire, right down to the finish line. Who would run through that ribbon first? Nelson didn't show up. He didn't go to the last race. Now, some might call this another flaw in my system. Of course Nelson didn't show up to the final round. Why on earth would he? It was in Yugoslavia. Why would you pay air freight and air travel costs just to go to a race where you have no possible chance of winning a world championship in real life? Counterpoint. He should have known that someone would invent a worldwide internet one day, and that on that internet, a video platform would be established called YouTube, where people could talk about stupid statistics and they could upload it for 16 people to watch in their bedrooms. And then he should have gone to that fucking race, because he should have known that if he was the world champion, if all of the other world champions were banned, then someone someday would talk about him. Is this video stupid?
It's falling in place, bring smiles to your face, something kids can enjoy.
1970 would see New Zealander Ginger Malloy make history, becoming the first rider to ride to a championship on a Japanese manufacturer. Malloy rode his Kawasaki H1R to victory over Angelo Bergamonti. Bergamonti won 4 races, but only finished 5. And Malloy's consistence would end up letting him take a lead by just 13 points at the end of the season. Agostini is still supposed to be winning all these championships. Isn't that wild? With him gone, we would see the recurrence of a weird footnote in MotoGP history: the championship tie. Rob Braun and Keith Turner would duke it out for the title, fighting down to the wire. Turner would secure victories in Austria, East Germany, and Sweden, while Braun would secure victories in West Germany, the Ulster Grand Prix, and Spain. Now in real life, the FIM settles ties by looking at minor results, meaning whoever has the most first places wins, if they're tied on those the most seconds, if they're tied on those the most thirds, etc, etc. Both of these riders finished with 3 wins on the calendar. However, Rob Braun finishes with 2 second places to Keith Turner's 0, meaning he takes the world championship here. 1972 would see Agostini win every single race in the championship but one. Once again, he's gone. So who would take his place? In his absence, Alberto Pagani would go on a nearly just as dominant run, winning all but 3 races on the season and becoming the first rider to crack 100 points, finishing with 105, the same record that Agostini set way back in 1969. 1973 would see Phil Reed win the first of his 2 dominant 500cc championships. However, he already won a championship a decade ago. He's been gone for 10 years. The field has completely changed since then. New Zealander Kim Newcomb would win on his Koenig machine, an engine designed by Dieter Koenig, which was never able to secure better than a championship second in real life, was now made into a winning machine at the hands of Kim Newcomb. In 1974, Gianfranco Bonera would battle Finnish riders Pentti Korhonen and Teuvo Lansivori for the title, eventually coming out on top with 5 wins. I can never say this name right. I'm so sorry, Finnish people. 1975 would see Teuvo Lansivori fight for the championship a second year in a row, but he would be just barely beat by Japanese rider Hideo Kanaya, who netted 3 wins and a second place in the first 4 rounds of the season. A rookie Barry Sheene would also make an impression, winning 2 races amidst a season full of retirements. 1976 doesn't change very much at all. the top 6 riders are still here to compete as normal, and Barry Sheene would avenge his loss last year by beating Teo Valence-Ivory in order to take the title. Sheene takes the crown easy on the back of 6 championship wins. In 1977, without Barry Sheene in the championship hunt, the Americans were free to start winning 1 year earlier than usual, with American rider Steve Baker beating out fellow countryman Pat Hennon and Venezuelan rider Johnny Cecotto for the world title. Next year would see the arrival of King Kenny Roberts, and just like in real life, he wins in his rookie season, becoming just the second rider to surpass 100 points, getting a grand total of 110, the most in history up to this point. 1979 would see the start of an interesting trend. See, in this timeline, a true American invasion of the sport was never possible. Since riders can't win multiple championships back-to-back, the 3 or 4 dominant American riders who made waste of the 80s and early 90s wouldn't end up securing multiple championships like they could in real life. A prime example of this is Kenny Roberts. Roberts was supposed to get a three-peat of championships in 78, 79, and 80. However, here he's unable to, and the championship goes to Virginio Ferrari instead.
Operate. Where's the dog?
In 1980, Randy Mamola would battle with Marco Lucanelli for the title, and he would end up beating him by 18 points, winning the championship he never got in real life. In 1981, in real life, Marco Lucanelli would win the title, and he keeps it here, although this time in a much more dominant fashion. With his 3 most prominent contenders all being eliminated in years prior, he would go on an absolute tear, winning the championship with 118 points, 50 points ahead of his nearest rival. Lucanelli would take 7 victories, scoring 118 points and finishing 50 points ahead of his nearest rival, Graham Crosby. In 1982, Crosby would duel with a different Italian for the championship, Franco Uncini. Uncini would win 8 rounds, with Crosby coming close behind, finishing second in 7 rounds and securing a win in San Marino. Predictably, Uncini wins this by a wide margin, taking the championship and moving on from the sport. 1983 would see another very close title battle, this time between Eddie Lawson, Takazumi Katayama, and Mark Fonten. Fonten had an impressively consistent season, finishing every single race between 2nd and 4th position. Meanwhile, Lawson and Fonten would trade victories. Each of them would win 5 Grand Prix, secure 2 second places, and 1 third. However, Lawson would go on to finish 2 more races than Katayama had, just barely giving him an edge in the points. The next season, with Lawson and Mamola out, Freddie Spencer and Frenchman Raymond Roche would do battle for the crown. With 5 rounds left, they were both tied for points. However, Spencer would be injured with 3 rounds remaining, and allow Raymond Roche to go on to take the title. In 1985, Spencer would come back in force, winning all but 3 rounds and finishing 78 points ahead of his nearest rivals, Christian Saron and Wayne Gardner. The latter of the pair would come out swinging in 1986, and winning 8 rounds and securing an additional podium. Without Lawson in his way, the Australian Wayne Gardner would easily win the 1986 World Championship. While many fans were surely expecting a dominant season from Christian Saron, who had come so close in the past couple of years, his attempts would be thwarted thanks to a series of rough crashes throughout the season, leaving the title to be decided between British riders Niall Mackenzie and Ron Haslam. Both riders would find consistent points finishes throughout the season, but 3 wins from Haslam would allow him to secure the victory by just 12 points. 1988 seemed to be Saron's year. He was the best rider left in the championship by far, and he would secure 4 wins and 9 podiums. However, a rookie Wayne Rainey would come in and absolutely demolish any of Saron's hopes at winning the championship. With Wayne Gardner and Eddie Lawson not able to wage war ahead of him, Wayne Rainey would secure his first championship 2 years early. 1989 would see another rookie come in to thwart Christian Saron's attempts at a championship, Kevin Schwantz. Schwantz would come in and go undefeated in races that he finished. However, luckily for Saron, that was only 6 of the 15 rounds. Christian Saron finally got his day, beating out the Lucky Strike Suzuki rider and finishing with a final tally of 220 points.
But he's never faced an adversary like this. Godzilla versus Charles Barkley.
The 1990s. A MotoGP era often defined by the dominance of Mick Doohan. For half of the decade, Doohan would win every single championship, a streak from 94 to 98, where he was the most dominant rider, perhaps in all of history. Doohan would go on to be known as one of the best riders of all time. However, here, he would never get the chance to define the 90s like he had, as he wins the championship in the very first year of the decade, barely beating out Kevin Schwantz and being banned from the sport. So now that the 90s have been blown wide open, who will be the champions? Who will take the glory? Who will win the PS5? They famously gave out a PS5 at the end of the 90s to Mick Doohan because they said that he was the most dominant rider in the... This is a stupid bit. Well, first up on the chopping block is Kevin Schwantz. Really, Schwantz has been here too long. Get him out of here. He's come second the past 2 years. Give him the championship, let him go home. It's time. The following year, John Kaczynski would make a run at the title, barely having been snubbed by his fellow American the year prior. This time he would face another one of his countrymen, Doug Chandler. Chandler, who would go his entire career without a win in real life, would secure 3 victories this season alone. With 2 rounds left in the season, Chandler led Kaczynski by 3 points. In the next 2 rounds, both riders would finish P1 and P2 respectively, leading Kaczynski to a world title by just 7 points. In 1993, Australian legend Daryl Beattie would take the title that he never got in real life, barely beating out Luca Cadalora. The following year, Cadalora would have to do battle with Alberto Puig and Shinichi Ito, and this would end up being one of the closest fights in World Championship history. Cadalora would secure more victories on the season than Puig, but Puig would finish every single race in the top 5, which left him ahead by 13 points heading into the final round. Meanwhile, Shinichi Ito would secure a series of wins and podium finishes across the season, and he would lead both of his fellow competitors by 3 points heading into the final round. The FIM Grand Prix at Harama would see the final chapter in their season-long battle. Shinichi Ito would retire, leaving him with a total of 211 points on the season. A 4th place finish from Puig netted him 219 points, surely enough to beat out Cadalora for the title. However, no one was able to stop the Italian that day, and Luca Cadalora would secure a victory at Harama, beating Alberto Puig by just 1 point for the world title. 1995 would see Puig get off to a strong start, securing 7 podiums early in the season. However, a bad crash would leave him out for the rest of the year, leaving the door open for his fellow Spaniard Alex Crivier to win the championship. Finishing with an impressive record of 6 wins, 2 P2s, and 3 P3s, Crivier would score 238 points, 50 ahead of Shinichi Ito, his closest rival. Norifume Abe would lead most of the season in 1996, before Brazilian rider Alex Barros would secure victory in the final round, finishing in 4th place in Australia, while Abe would retire. 1997 would see 2 Japanese rivals do battle for the title, Aoki and Okada. Aoki would lead by 4 points heading into the final round. However, just like his fellow countryman the year prior, he would retire, leaving Okada the chance to win the championship. 1998 would see Mick Doohan's final 500cc World Championship, doing battle with Max Biaggi, but eventually taking the title. Without Doohan present, Biaggi takes the title easily. However, there is a very interesting situation which we should take note of here. The 1998 Catalan Grand Prix would see Max Biaggi and Alex Barros both get black flagged for jockeying for position under a yellow flag. However, with Alex Barros not here, it's likely that Max Biaggi would never get this black flag. Now, in most cases, speculation like this would be worthless, as a black flag means that you're disqualified, and there's no point in assuming that a rider could have won the race. However, in this particular instance, Biaggi kept racing, simply choosing to ignore the black flag and race on, and he would end up crossing the line in first. Meaning that I'm going to give him the win here because he deserves something from that day. That was pretty fucking cool. Undeniably, he would have won the race if he hadn't been black flagged. And it's likely that he wouldn't have been. The guy who he was fighting for position with is long gone. He won the championship 2 years ago. So, Max Biaggi wins very comfortably with 8 victories on the season. In real life, Alex Crivier would win the 1999 World Championship. However, he was banned 4 years ago, leaving Sete Gibernau and Kenny Roberts Jr. to fight for the title. They would have a year-long battle, with Gibernau eventually emerging victorious. Both would find consistent podium finishes and good results all season long. However, a non-point scoring finish in Russia would leave Kenny Roberts Jr. down by 3 points.
Mess, you wring it out, you wash it in the washing machine. Made in Germany. You know the Germans always make good stuff.
In 2000, Roberts would find a new rival, a rookie Valentino Rossi. Just like in real life, Roberts will keep his championship, defeating the young doctor and securing his title. In real life, similar to Mick Doohan with the 90s, Rossi would go on to define the 2000s, winning 7 Premier Class World Championships. However, he never gets the chance. He keeps his first title in 2001, but this time it's his last. He wins this title in utterly dominant fashion. With his chief rival Max Biaggi having moved on already, Rossi is free to secure 340 points, becoming the first rider to break the 300-point barrier, and doing so by 40 points, on the back of 12 victories in 2001. In 2002, Biaggi and Rossi would secure the majority of the victories. However, with both of them gone, Japanese rider Toru Okawa was free to win 7 races and come in second 5 times. He would beat out his closest rivals, Norifume Abe and Carlos Checa, by 130 points. In 2003, the top 3 contenders had all already been banned, leaving Loris Capirossi to take the World Championship. Even with 4 retirements, every finish was a podium finish, meaning that Capirossi would win in dominant fashion, getting the championship he never got in real life. The powerhouses of the early 2000s have all been eliminated. With the top 4 contenders gone, American Colin Edwards would beat out Makoto Tamada, Carlos Checa, and Nicky Hayden for the title in 2004. In 2005, 6 of the top 10 riders in the standings have moved on. Marco Melandri and Nicky Hayden would fight for the title this year. Both riders would exchange victories across the season. Nicky Hayden would get 4 to Melandri's 8. In the end, 8 is of course a bigger number than 4, and Melandri would come away with the championship. 2006 would see the famous championship battle between Valentino Rossi and Nicky Hayden. With Rossi gone, Hayden would face a very different rival this year, his own rookie teammate, Danny Pedrosa. Pedrosa simply couldn't keep up with Hayden's consistency, and would end up losing the championship to his teammate by just 20 points. Pedrosa would come out in force in 2007, only finishing off the podium once, and only retiring 3 times. Unfortunately for the young Honda rider, Casey Stoner would put on an absolute clinic this year. Stoner would finish second or better in all but 2 races of the season, beating out Pedrosa by 104 points. 2008 would be Pedrosa's year. The Spaniard would reach the mountaintop through an incredibly consistent season, which would net him 318 points. He would beat out Jorge Lorenzo and Andrea Dovizioso for the title. In the real world, Pedrosa is known as perhaps the best rider to never win a Premier Class World Championship. However, here, he would not be eligible for such a title, having already secured the peak of victory. Jorge Lorenzo was not content with second place, however, and the next season, he would fight back hard. Retiring from just 4 races and securing victory in all others, he would retire from the sport and be free to move on to the halls of Valhalla. I mean, World Superbike, because that's probably where the riders would go in this world. Like, you'd probably win MotoGP and then just go to World Superbike and like race there for however long you wanted to. Sort of like the retirement home for the best riders in the world. I mean, that's kind of what it is now, if we're being honest. With the barbershop quartet of speed demons known as Rossi, Stoner, Lorenzo, and Pedrosa all out by the time 2010 rolled around, Andrea Dovizioso and Ben Spies were left to battle for the championship. Both were unrelenting, trading victories and scarcely finishing off the podium. Spies led Dovizioso by 7 points with just 2 rounds left, but a DNS in Portugal left him behind by 18 points. He would win the final round, but a second place from Dovizioso would mean that the championship was his. In the 2011 season, only 3 of the top 10 riders are left in the standings. This season would feature a title fight between Ben Spies and Marco Simoncelli. Both riders would have amazing seasons, getting win after win. However, sadly, we'll never know how this one would have played out, as in real life, Simoncelli was tragically killed at the 2011 Malaysian Grand Prix, the penultimate round of the season. There's no way of knowing, and I don't want to speculate on whether or not such an accident would have happened in this alternate reality, and there's no point. Since there are no records from Simoncelli after this point, there's no way to know whether or not he would have beaten Spies in these hypothetical races. Spies takes the World Championship in 2011. In 2012, British rider Cal Crutchlow would get off to an incredible start, winning 5 of the first 7 rounds of the championship, and being a sure title lock for most fans. However, a string of retirements late in the season would lead Alvaro Bautista to just barely beat out the British rider by 20 points. The following season, Crutchlow was the overwhelming favorite to win. He had looked like a sure thing last season, and he was coming back in full force. He would secure 3 wins and only finish off the podium once. However, unfortunately, his campaign was thwarted by what may be the greatest rookie campaign in the history of the sport. In our new timeline, Marc Marquez wins 15 of the 18 rounds of the season and would finish with 395 points, the highest in the pre-sprint era of MotoGP. Crutchlow would move to Ducati for the 2014 championship, and unfortunately, he would experience a string of technical difficulties that would lead to retirements throughout the season. It became clear he was out of contention, and the championship would actually end up being fought by two brothers, Aleix and Pol Espargaro. At the end of the season, two retirements would force Aleix into second place, and Pol would take the title. In 2015, Crutchlow would again have a fantastic season, but he was outshined by two riders, Andrea Iannone and Bradley Smith. Iannone would secure 11 wins, and would go on to become a champion, being banned from the sport and never getting the chance to eat any contaminated meat in Malaysia. In 2016, Crutchlow would again fall victim to a rough season. Starting with a series of retirements and low points finishes, Crutchlow would pull up in the second half of the season, securing a variety of wins and podiums all throughout the latter half. However, it wouldn't be enough, and he would finish second in the championship behind Spanish rider Maverick Viñales. Viñales was too much to stop, winning 11 rounds and securing 2 additional podiums, finishing with 330 points on the season. 2017 would again see Crutchlow unable to keep up. In real life, we're still in the era of Marc Marquez's dominance. However, with him long gone, there was no one who could match the otherworldly consistency of Johann Zarco. Winning 7 rounds and only having 1 retirement, the Frenchman would dominate this championship, securing the title with ease. In 2018, Crutchlow would again be a title favorite, fighting against Danilo Petrucci and Alex Rins for the championship. Rins would secure 5 victories and 11 podiums, but even this wasn't enough to stop his other 2 competitors. Petrucci and Crutchlow would both get great results. However, at the end of the day, Crutchlow had 4 retirements to Petrucci's 2, and consistent points finishes in those races helped Petrucci to secure the victory. 2019 would be Crutchlow's final competitive season. He would put up a good fight, securing 3 wins and 10 podiums, but 6 retirements would keep him down in 4th place on the season. In this universe, Cal Crutchlow would be the likely candidate for the greatest rider to never win a championship. He came so close so many times, but a series of technical problems and crashes would keep him from winning every single year. He would likely be the sport's biggest superstar, being the only name that people could rely on year after year, which is sad. Meanwhile, in 2019, Alex Rins and Fabio Quartararo would duke it out for the title. They would take it right down to the wire, and the championship would be decided at the final round in Valencia. Rins led Quartararo by 12 points, but a P3 finish from Rins was enough to secure the title for the Spaniard. In 2020, for the first time in a while, things stay the same. The top 2 competitors are both still here, and predictably, Joan Mir beats out Franco Morbidelli again. 2021 also stays eerily similar to real life, with Fabio Quartararo dominating the early half of the season and Pecco Bagnaia making a late season push, but it wouldn't be enough, and Quartararo would keep his championship. We're almost entering a string of stability here. With his chief rival gone in 2022, Bagnaia wins the championship a lot more easily than he did in real life. However, here's where things are about to change, as we all know that Bagnaia would go on to win the championship in 2023. However, with him gone, and the advent of sprint races, which made this a way bigger pain in the ass, a close battle would end up emerging between Jorge Martin and Marco Bezzecchi. Both riders were incredibly consistent, and Bezzecchi would actually end up winning 6 Grands Prix to Martin's 5. However, Martin would find impressive sprint success, and Bezzecchi would only find middling results. In the end, Martin would take the championship by a mere 6 points. And there it is. That's the full history of the MotoGP championship if champions were banned and were not able to compete in subsequent years. 75 new champions have been crowned. But before we take a look at what we've learned, let's go back and just for a quick second, look at this season. How would the 2024 championship race be turning out? This is ahead of the Emilia-Romagna round in between Misano and Misano 2. Who would be in the lead? Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, with Bagnaia, Martin, and Marc Marquez all banned from the championship, Enea Bastianini would be utterly dominant, having a 104-point lead over his closest competitor, who was actually a rookie Pedro Acosta. With the races left, it would take a miraculous series of events for anyone but Bastianini to be crowned the 2024 MotoGP World Champion. Before we wrap up, let's take a look at some interesting statistics that may have changed. In the real world, Giacomo Agostini has the record for the most Premier Class championships, with 8. Now, it's a 75-way tie between Leslie Graham, Umberto Massetti, Jeff No, I'm just kidding, we're not doing that. Seriously though, in this world, there are some interesting patterns that have emerged. First, let's take a look at rookie champions. In the real world, you could argue that there have been anywhere between 3 and 5 rookie champions. Leslie Graham was of course a rookie just like everyone else in the 1949 season. And while Umberto Massetti had competed in individual races before, his first full-time racing season in the 500cc class was in 1950. Plus John Surtees in 56, Kenny Roberts in 78, and Marc Marquez in 2013 make up your 5 rookie champions from real life. In our new timeline, all of these riders keep their championships. However, we can add 7 more to the list. Emilio Mendogni, Giacomo Agostini, Steve Baker, Eddie Lawson, Wayne Rainey, Max Biaggi, and Johan Zarco all also won the championship in their rookie season, bringing the total up to 12. Unbelievably, that means that a whopping 16% of all champions are rookies in this new timeline. Let's take a look at the distribution of championships by country. In the real world, 4 or 5 countries have historically dominated the World Championship. The breakdown of championships by country looks like this. Italy takes home the most, 22 in total, followed by Britain with 17, then the USA with 15, followed by Spain with 11, Australia with 8, and Rhodesia/Zimbabwe and France with 1 apiece. In the new reality, things get shaken up, with some of the riders who win many championships for their country never getting the chance. In addition, this serves as a count of the number of champions from each country, since each rider can only win 1 championship. More countries got the chance to win championships. Italy still takes the most titles home with 19, followed by the USA with 12 champions, the UK and Spain are tied with 11 apiece, Australia produced 7 champions, France brought home 4, Japan is the most successful country who never won a championship in real life, winning 3, Rhodesia/Zimbabwe get another one for a total of 2, tied with New Zealand, and Switzerland, Ireland, and Brazil each get 1 apiece. Finally, who would be remembered as the greatest of all time in this universe? Well, that's a really weird question. See, when you think of the greatest of all time in certain sports, it's usually players or riders who have created a dynasty, a legacy over a long period of time. However, in a format like this, you would want to leave the sport as quickly as possible. So surely the greatest of all time would be one of the 12 champions who only competed for a single season. So who had the best one-season career? Well, in my opinion, it would come down to 3 main candidates: John Surtees, Giacomo Agostini, and Marc Marquez. Everyone else still had amazing seasons, but they couldn't match the sheer winning consistency of these 3. Surtees would win 3 races in a row and then break his arm, meaning most might be hesitant to call him the greatest, but he would certainly be one of the biggest what-ifs in MotoGP history. Giacomo Agostini would win 7 of 10 races in his rookie season, maintaining a winning percentage of 70%, and winning every race he entered. Undeniably, a fantastic rookie season by any metric. Marc Marquez would be the most recent candidate, having by far the longest season. While he did finish second in 1 race, not going undefeated, he won 15 of 18 races that season, giving him the most wins in a season in this timeline, and in an era with much more competitive machinery across the board, it's my personal bet that Marc Marquez would probably be considered the greatest rider of all time in this universe. Anyway, thus concludes my stealing of Mr. V's Garage's video. Once again, they were beyond nice to me, considering I sent them a really stupid fucking email and they had no reason to answer it, but they decided to anyway. So please go check them out. They're amazing, make great content. If you like statistics, you like Formula One, you like funny people, he's funny, go watch him. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. This video did take me quite a while, and I would really appreciate it if you would do me one favor and have a fantastic day.